Okay, so we're going to jump into a really ancient story today, one that, on the surface, seems to have this glaring contradiction. The text says one God appears, but then three men show up. So what's going on? Is this just some kind of scribal error, or is it a profound mystery that might actually force us to redefine what we even mean by the word one? Let's dig in and find out.
So right out of the gate, the text just throws this puzzle at us. I mean, look at this. The narrator, the one with the all-seeing perspective, tells us flat out, YHW, one God, appeared to Abraham. Simple enough, right? But then, what does Abraham actually see? He looks up and there are three men standing there. Not one, three.
Your first instinct might be to just try and explain this away, right? To say, oh, it's a contradiction, a mistake in the manuscript. But the argument we're going to explore today is that no, this is totally intentional. This isn't some problem the author wants us to solve. It's a mystery the author wants us to lean into and really investigate.
All right, so let's break this down. First up, that central puzzle right there in the opening verses. And honestly, everything, I mean everything that follows, hinges on how we understand this initial setup.
The key, and you've got to catch this, is the order in which the narrator gives us the information. The narrator, our reliable guide, tells us first who is appearing. The identity is established right away. Yahweh appeared. It's only after that fact is locked in that we're told what Abraham sees, the three men. So you see what the text is doing? It's telling us how to interpret the scene. It's instructing us to see the three through the lens of the one.
Okay, so now let's put on our detective hats for a second, because the text itself actually leaves a trail of clues for us. They're hidden in the grammar, in the flow of the story, and they're all there to help us unpack this thing.
So, clue number one comes from Abraham himself. I mean, how does this legendary patriarch react when he sees these three guys walking up to his tent?
Okay, check out the grammar here. It's so important. Abraham sees three people, right? But he speaks to them in the singular. He says, my Lord, not my lords. He bows down to the whole group, but he addresses them like he's talking to just one person. Now think about this. In a text that is so careful about who you worship and how you do it, the fact that Abraham isn't corrected here, well, that silence is deafening. It's like the author is screaming at us to pay attention to this detail.
All right, the next clue isn't about what anyone says, it's about how the story is told. It's like we're watching through the narrator's camera lens. And what's wild is how the perspective just flips back and forth. 1 second it's singular, the next it's plural. It's almost like the author doesn't see a difference between them at all.
And this slide shows it perfectly. Look at that. One line says, so they said, and then boom, the very next divine quote is introduced with Yahweh said. There's no transition, no explanation like, and then the one who was Yahweh spoke. Nothing. The text is deliberately blurring the lines. It's treating the plural they and the singular Yahweh as the exact same speaker. This is no mistake, folks. This is a powerful, intentional theological statement.
But I can hear you thinking, wait a minute, what about the next chapter, Genesis 19? Because two of these visitors go on to Sodom, and there the text calls them angels. So, case closed, right? It was just Yahweh hanging out with two of his angels. Problem solved?
Well, not so fast. This is where we have to be careful with translation. The original Hebrew word here is malach, and that word doesn't automatically mean angel, like we think of it today, a completely different type of creature with wings. It's a job description. It literally means messenger. It tells you what someone is doing, not what they are. So think about it. Their identity as Yahweh was already hammered home in chapter 18. Calling them messengers in chapter 19 doesn't suddenly change who they are. It just tells us what their current assignment is.
So if the text is really holding these two things together, a singular identity but a plural appearance, then what on earth does it mean when it says God is one? This question brings us right to the heart of the matter. And to answer it, we have to look at the specific words the language itself gives us. And believe me, this is where it all starts to make sense.
See, ancient Hebrew has this incredible distinction that we just don't have in English. It has two completely different words for one. The first word is yahid. That means one in an absolute, solitary sense. Like an only child. There are no others. But then there's this other word, echad. And echad means a unified one, a composite one. Think of a bunch of grapes becoming one cluster, or a husband and wife becoming one flesh. It's a oneness made up of multiple parts.
And here is the absolute kicker, the Shema. The most central, foundational declaration of monotheism in the entire Hebrew Bible? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Guess which word for one it uses? It's not yahid, it's echad.
The most important statement about God's oneness in all of Judaism uses the word for a composite unity. So suddenly, Genesis 18 doesn't look like a contradiction anymore, does it? It looks like a perfect illustration of what that echad unity actually looks like in practice. Grasping this idea that the Bible itself defines God's unity as echad is way more than just a cool language lesson. It has massive theological implications. It basically closes the door on certain ways of thinking about God.
When you just read the text straightforwardly, it creates a real problem for any theological system that insists God must be an absolutely singular, solitary being. I mean, think about it. For strict Unitarianism, you've got an irreducible plurality here. For modalism, which sees God in different modes one after another, well, here you have three figures present at the exact same time. And even for a concept like Islamic Tawhid, which really emphasizes absolute divine simplicity, this text shows a kind of complexity in internal relationship. The picture in Genesis 18 just doesn't fit neatly into those boxes.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? What's the bottom line here? What have we actually learned by digging so deep into the nuts and bolts of this story?
Now, let's be super clear about one thing. Genesis 18 is not giving us a fully formed, systematic doctrine of the Trinity. You won't find words like persons or essence or the Nicene Creed anywhere in these verses. To claim that would be reading history backwards, forcing later ideas onto an ancient text.
But here's what the text does do, and this is crucial. It draws the lines in the sand. It establishes, right from the beginning, that YHW's oneness is echad. It's a composite unity. It shows that this one God has an identity that can include real, distinct plurality. And by doing that, it lays the groundwork. It provides the solid, narrative foundation that allows later Trinitarian thinking to grow out of the biblical text instead of being something forced on top of it.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway of all. What if the Bible's most confusing, most difficult passages aren't actually problems we need to solve? What if they're revelations, just waiting for us to see them for what they are? The story of Abraham's three visitors suggests that sometimes the deepest truths are found not by trying to simplify the text to fit our neat little boxes, but by being willing to sit with its profound and, sometimes mysterious complexity.